So what would you say is the most important consideration when selecting a technology provider?
Good question. To rephrase the question a little bit, when it comes to the considerations around a brokerage firm that you're going to deal with, that conflict of interest is the first thing I would look at. So in other words, what happens when I click buy? Do you book that trade? Are you sitting on the other side of that trade, or does it go through on an STP, a no dealing desk basis, to your liquidity providers? So that's the first thing I would look at. The second thing when it comes to choosing a broker is, the customer service levels. Before you open the account, call them a couple times. Call them at 3 a.m. See if the phone gets picked up, if you're on hold for 10 minutes. Know what to expect. You'll learn rather what to expect when you do open a live account as far as the service that you'll get. Resources as far as education, as far as research, as far as charting packages, trading signals, again automation, anything along those lines. And then almost further down the list is the actual technology aspect of the offering. How usable is it? How intuitive is it? When you log on, do you figure it out within 5 seconds, or do you have to call in 10 times to figure out how to place a trade, basically? So in the list of considerations when picking a broker, the technology element has almost become commoditized. People have fairly intuitive platforms. I would certainly put ours at the top of the list, but overall, the differentiator isn't on the technology side. It's on the rest of it. Again, the dealing desk versus no dealing desk comparison and the services are big. So those are the considerations I would put in front of people.
And finally, Brendan, with the turmoil in the Eurozone looking likely to increase rather than flatten out, I mean, what advice would you offer a retail trader on how to trade these markets?
I would say don't overcomplicate things. I think traders tend to do that, and like I was saying earlier, just pay attention to the headlines. So if Greece comes out with news, the elections are big, interest rate decisions are big, any talk at a Eurozone level as far as bailouts and things like that are really going to help determine where the Euro goes, who stays in it, who leaves. And I think the big mistake that they made when setting up the Eurozone is they didn't have a plan of action for when someone needed to leave it. Either the Eurozone and the Monetary Union needed to force someone out because they weren't following the requirements, or it just made more sense, like it may be the case in Greece, for them to bail out, rejig, revalue, and then come back stronger sooner than later.
And they've done little in the interim either to start introducing some legislation, retrospective or otherwise, especially as they've loaded more countries into the common currency area.
So anytime you create a union, I think hindsight obviously 2020, but anytime you create a union like that, you have to define the parameters for exiting. Again, either how to force someone to exit or how someone can voluntarily exit. Because that doesn't exist, people are a lot stronger and more prone to the bailout scenarios, and in some cases throwing good money after bad. I think if Greece does exit, it's going to set the precedent. There'll finally be a policy, there'll finally be a way for someone to exit the Eurozone and exit the Euro itself. And once that's the case, a gate has opened. And now there's a precedent, now there's an example to follow. And I think it will be very critical, especially for traders of the Euro, to watch that scenario. If Greece does it, now there's an example to follow. And when others get in trouble, either now or in the future, there's a venue for them to exit.
Another currency to trade and attract.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when the euro was introduced, people thought that that's the end of
everything.
FX. We might as well pack up and go home.
Right.
I mean,
far from that.
Far from that. It just shows. So it just goes to demonstrate how important that is, essential to have a really wide knowledge, not just of the financial markets, but political, social, technological.
I agree.
So retail traders really have to make sure that they're up to speed with everything, and don't just assume that it's an easy thing just to click a button and
you make tons.
Yeah,
you got to follow what's going on, and like I said, it doesn't mean that you've got to spend hours a day analyzing and reading every research report out there. The headlines will tell you a lot. If you can follow those, you'll know. You'll at least have a very strong flavor of what's happening and what the trends are and what looks to be coming down the pike.
And there's no better way to educate somebody than by just give them the tools so that they can sort of educate themselves.
Yeah, exactly right.